guys, welcome back to Talking Walking Dead. We're going to discuss Cherokee Rose, which definitely was not quite going off the momentum that last week left us on.
Yeah, it was still on the farm.
Yeah.
Last week's was my favorite episode of The Walking Dead ever. That was on the farm too, but there was a whole drama with Carl, and then there was a great sidebar with Shane and Otis, and the big twist at the end.
Yeah.
This one, they're still on the farm, but there's kind of like hijinks. It's an unfocused episode. There was a whole thing in the middle with the zombie, the bloated zombie in the well.
Yeah, sort of the Toxic Avenger meets Garbage Pail Kid zombie.
Yeah, and they got ripped apart, and it kind of felt like they were just searching for a zombie gross out moment, which other than that, this episode wouldn't have had. And they failed at the end, so it didn't even make sense to put it in there. And the fact that they would dip a member of their team into the well, the risk far outweighed the reward.
Yeah, I mean, look, the moment Maggie said that there were 5 wells there on the farm, so I don't want to drink from the well that the zombie was soaking in, you know? You've got 4 other choices.
Even if they're afraid that it's going to bleed into it,
Yeah.
he's still soaking in it. The well's done.
I think that well is done. You got 4 other options. Let's move on. And so, yeah, it did feel kind of like a sequence we didn't even need.
And the only other thing that kind of brought up, there were a few side moments with Herschel and Maggie and Rick kind of like making a partnership, like whether his team could stay on the farm or not. You kind of get the sense that Herschel and Maggie don't really approve of the way that they're killing zombies. There's a weird couple little looks here and there. But other than that, Glenn got laid.
Glenn got laid. That's kind of the main thrust, no pun intended, of the episode is Glenn having sex with Maggie, which, hey, good for him.
Yeah, and fans of the comics were kind of waiting for this, hoping it was intact on the show, because they do change things. And for people who are just watching the show, haven't read the comics, but were complaining that there wasn't enough post-apocalyptic sex going on, there you go. All you really needed were condoms, because they're going to do it responsibly, apparently. So
yeah, and you know, Maggie had her nice little moment saying "I'm lonely too," and it was a good moment between the two characters. And then the other big thing there was Glenn, of course, stealing the pregnancy test and getting it to Lori.
That's right. Which actually puts a spin on something we assume people who read the comics, and maybe that's why they're teaching us not to assume on this show.
And people who didn't read the comics, I think, assume this too.
They could have gotten that too, was what did Jenner whisper to Rick? Because we all thought it was about Lori's pregnancy.
Yeah.
But now it's got to be something different, or else it's not going to make sense.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a big moment now if Lori says to Rick, "I'm pregnant." He says, "Oh, I already know. Jenner told me." So now there's got to be.
It was a big cliffhanger last season.
right. And I've been holding
sitting
on
on that.
Yeah, so it's got to be something else, we assume. But yeah, overall, there was some good stuff with Daryl, I thought, at least, that touched him on.
You know, he seems to be the only one out there actively looking for Sophia. I think it would be actually an interesting turn for the show and for Carol's character. If they never found Sophia. The show's taken some dark turns, who knows. But he found that little closet where she was sleeping in. I don't ever want to see Merle again, but now I am curious to see how Daryl's going to react to seeing his brother again, now that Daryl seems like such a changed person. Also considering the fact that we've never even seen them interact. Yeah,
I mean, we already liked Daryl last season, but this season especially, I mean, he's the guy out there actively looking for Sophia pretty much every episode, and you know, he's easy to root for at this point. It's hard to reconcile with the horribly racist, coked-up brother that is Merle, but like you said, we've never even seen the two together, so what would that be like? I am a little curious about that.
Well, I get along great with my horribly racist, coked-up brother, so I've got my fingers crossed.
Maybe there is hope after all. Not our favorite episode of Walking Dead, but hey, good for Glenn having some sex. Let us know what you thought, and we'll be back next week to talk about The Walking Dead.
Glenn sex.